Hey, I'm Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm joined by Gina Fiore, aka Miss Brown, aka RX Gamble. Thank you for sitting down and sharing a little bit about your story. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Okay, great.
Can you tell people that don't know how you got into advantage play?
Yes, I was a dealer. I was a 21 dealer when I was 21, and I didn't like my job, and I didn't have any idea what else I could do. I wanted to be a musician. That was what I wanted to do, but that's very hard to do.
A singer or playing?
I played guitar.
Oh, okay.
And we used to play in local lounges. We used to have a Saturday residency at Gordon Biersch.
Oh, wow.
So I was playing, but I was just gigging locally. So I got a job as a dealer because I wasn't really making any other money. And there was a guy at my job who quit. And I said, "What are you going to do? Did you get a new job?" And he said, I've told this story, but he said, "I'm going to count cards. I'm going to play poker and count cards in Laughlin." That's what he said. That's a quote. And it was at that moment it was like a plot point. I had an epiphany, like, oh my God. Because I had heard of card counting from my mother when she was a dealer at the Horseshoe and I was in high school. And she told me she thought I'd be good at it. She doesn't even know what it is. She saw people getting kicked out and it had something to do with math and I was good at math. So I heard this guy say he was going to do it for a living and I was, "You can do that for a living? This is a thing?" And I became obsessed, completely obsessed. So I got some books and I was obsessed. That there's no other word for it. And I would just study at home by myself. I didn't know any professional gamblers. I didn't know any poker players, but that was it. That's what turned me out, basically.
And what was your card counting experience like?
I went downtown and I joined BJ21, and I knew that high op 2 and AO 2, advanced omega 2, gave the biggest edges rather than high low. So I said, I'm going to do one of those. And I went downtown to the bookstore, and high op 2 was behind the counter, and AO 2 was in a book, Blackjack for Blood, on the shelf. And I don't know what to get, but Blackjack for Blood was a book where high op 2 was just the indices and the count. So I got Blackjack for Blood and I read it and I loved it. And it was more than just counting cards. It was stories about traveling and about cover and disguising yourself. And I learned advanced omega 2 and looking back, I guess it was hard to learn, but not anything that people will say, "Oh, that sounds so hard. I couldn't do that." But I taught myself, and I'd have decks of cards on my counter, and it would be like 6 decks, 5.5, or 5 3/4, 5.5, 5 1/4, and it just went down so I could like eyeball. Yeah, and I just taught myself using that book, and then I started asking more questions on BJ21. And
well, you were obsessed.
I was obsessed.
And you're good at math.
I'm not that good at math.
Well, you said you were good.
My mom said I was good.
Your mom said you were good.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Low level stuff. I'm probably better than average, but I'm not good at math.
Maybe the obsession is what.
I was obsessed.
But then you started playing, and what was that journey like?
I was dealing blackjack, and I'd practice while I was dealing. And I was dealing mostly shoes, so I'd be doing AO2 in my head, counting aces on the side, dealing a shoe. So that got me really good really fast. And then I started playing on my days off. I was dealing in Palm Springs, and I started playing at like Saboba and 29 Palms, and I won right away, which was motivating. And I remember I had been playing 6 months. I'd been card counting for 6 months. I still had my job, and I was at $20,000. And even though I didn't have a lot of money, it didn't seem like a lot of money. And I remember telling a poker player friend that I had made that I was up $20,000, and he was just like, "Wow, that's a lot of money." And at that point, I thought, "Oh, I'm doing it. I'm being successful." That was the moment.
And so, how did it go from that? I mean, were you getting backed off? Saboba, they backed me off so fast. I guess we were betting big, but were you getting backed off? Or were you getting hours in?
I was getting hours in. I was so aggressive too. I was betting black because I had money from my job. I was making 100, 110. And so I had money, so I was betting green and black. I wasn't getting backed off. I was super aggressive. I was in and out. I wasn't like camping at a table. And yeah, I wasn't getting backed off actually.
Then how did it lead from that to getting into more advanced skills?
I heard about hole carding on BJ21, and I couldn't believe you could see a hole card. Like, how do you see that? And then somebody showed me one once, and I got obsessed again. And then I started just walking around constantly looking for hole cards. And I knew that if I got card counting heat, it would affect me playing hole cards when I finally found a game. So I stopped card counting. I just walked around. And then I had eventually found dealers, and I had my paper list of my dealers. I'd write them down. I'd write how good they are. Carry these. I still have these lists. I just found them a little while ago, and I'd check my games. And and I had a plan that I was going to bet $35 a hand, which is a terrible bet size because when you get a blackjack, they have to convert, right? Terrible bet size, but I was going to bet $35 a hand and play X amount of hours per week and make $100K a year. I had this whole, and that's not what I did, but I had a plan.
Had you quit your job by the time you got into hole carding?
I quit my job after I started hole carding, not until I knew how to do that. Yeah.
Okay. And how long were you just focused on hole carding?
Forever.
Okay.
I learned other things. Like I learned to see the back card in Baccarat and count. One card Baccarat. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like you see the back card in Baccarat and they do the fan and you can figure out when that's coming out, which is one hand, like whatever, not a huge deal. But I started doing that, and then I tried shuffle tracking. I wasn't very good at that. I played online bonuses when I quit my job, which helped. I think I won $20K doing that, and it was a nice little boost. I learned stuff as I went, but hole carding was the main thing for the first 6 to 8 years, I would say.
What's the most difficult play you've pulled off that you can share?
I don't think I can. Don't think I can share.
Hole carding, we'll say.
Hole carding it can be difficult to set it up, to set it up and avoid detection. That's not it, though. I don't think I can get it. But there are some plays that are difficult, and after I play, I need to sleep because my brain is just on fire. I need to, and even like with other plays or even with hole carding, once I'm done with the trip, it leaves me. Like the strategy leaves me, and I'll be on a plane for my next hole carding trip, and now we have to play a 6-deck shoe with these rules, and I have flashcards, and I'll have to like go through them again. And then
that's good for people to hear. Yeah. Like you gotta continue to study your craft.
Yeah, I would have I have index cards, just like you're studying a language, and I've got like single deck, stand 17, or I've got double deck, double 10, 11 only. Like I've got the whole set. So like, what are the rules? Give me the flashcards. I need these for like a couple hours.
What's the most time you've put into learning a play or a skill?
Well, hole carding it's learn on the job. Card counting, I had to have studied over 100 hours because I didn't count until I knew what I was doing. So there was that. We tried to make a Paigao tiles team. And so we had to practice before we got there. And there were 6 of us, and we'd practice in an apartment. We'd set up tables and play tiles. And then a couple weeks we practiced till we decided we couldn't do it because none of us were Asian, and it just wasn't going to fly. Like, how are we possibly going to get this move down? So that was 2 weeks, but we didn't play that. There was a move that I played pre-COVID, and it was something that I figured out, which is rare to come up with something that's not written anywhere. I haven't seen it written anywhere, and I had to have somebody make the strategy for this move. And so just going to get information about the move and then having somebody make the strategy and then go in and where are we going to sit? Like, how are we going to get this move down? It was out of town, so it took a lot of trips. I don't know how many hours, but it took a good 6 weeks to get that down.
That sounds like a movie. That and the group of people in an apartment or whatever practicing Paigao tiles. 5 white guys and a white girl, all of us young. Like, how do we figure out what the dealer has, like doing our thing? And there was a book, I don't remember what it was, to help with that. Some of these questions come from our forum, and one of them is, what are the realities of being a female AP? Or is there anything that comes to mind? We've got a handful that are members. A few of them full time, card counters, or maybe they've added some other skills. But what would you say are some of those realities?
I think most APs get into it, are brought in by another advantage player. I wasn't, but I think mostly you know someone and they bring you in. And when women are brought in, it's usually by a guy, and they're in the student role, which we all start out that way, and they never leave the student role. Like, guys will branch out, or they'll learn, and they'll be an equal. And I don't know if it's like consciously or not, subconsciously, but the woman is usually not an equal, or ever, or if not as soon. And the woman actually plays it back also. Like, they're less alpha. I don't know how else to say this. They're less willing to try to take the lead. I don't know why that is, but it happens. So the woman comes in as a student, and then I've talked to guys too who bring their girlfriend in, or I've had conversations and the girlfriend isn't part of the conversation. And so I always try to look at them and like talk to them specifically, because I'm like, no, you do this too. You're not just like tagging along. So that's one thing. I think if you're skilled, the whole are you a woman or not kind of goes away. I think if you can hold your own, if you join a team or whatever, let's forget about that. If you actually do move past the student role, if you can hold your own, you're fine. I felt no one ever said, don't put Miss Brown on a game because she's female. It would be like, who's the best reader? Okay, Miss Brown. Well, that's fine.
I remember hearing you talk about, you think it's harder as far as being recognizable.
Yeah, I think guys can change their look way easier than a girl, for sure. Because when we change our look, it's a wig. Like, if we want to change our hair, it's a wig. Where if a guy wants to change his hair, he can grow it out pretty quick and have like a little ponytail. Or a thing that guys can do really easily is just have like a wig, a short-haired mullet wig, and put on a baseball cap, and it looks natural. And they don't have to have it lined up right here, because if you're wearing a wig, it has to be like lined up or it looks ridiculous. And then makeup, guys think, well, they can just put makeup on. It's like, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't change. If you have to change your whole personality, you're either going to dress like you're homeless, or you're going to dress like you're going to the club. And if you dress like you're going to the club, you're going to get all the attention. I think you're more recognizable.
We had, I think I've told you this before, but we had a couple women on our team, and they got more attention in the high limit rooms from surveillance because they just wanted to watch them.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, what is happening here with the bets or whatever? Yeah. And they drew attention simply because
they were
in surveillance wanted.
But they don't think you are smart, because casinos are misogynistic. So I've gotten away with playing the same game or going into the casino, and I'll add to it. Like, I'll count on my fingers. That always gets them. Like, I have a 14 and I draw like a 3. I'm like, 15, and it gets them all the time. But if you can, when you get recognized, you're more memorable. But you can go longer without being recognized if you just stay under the radar and quiet.
You had a short film just premiere at Tribeca, right?
Yeah.
How did that get made? What was behind all that?
There was a woman, a writer, director, producer, who was researching. She was writing a short about a female like hustler, cheater, something like that. And so she was researching, and she found my website and my blog, and she was like taken back, and she thought, this is a real person, this is real life. So she contacted me, and this is a thing about being a woman AP. You get contacted to do these shows or these interviews because I'm the token female. They want me to talk because who could we talk to? And people will say, talk to Miss Brown. And I don't like to do those because they'll ask you, what's it like being a woman? Or they'll play on that, like, and I don't like it. Or they'll want to talk about, what's your biggest win? And I'm not, it's boring. So she reached out, and she said I could have creative control. Like, if I didn't want to talk about anything, if I didn't want to whatever. And I trusted her, and I knew she was creative and she'd do a good job. And I immediately thought, I want to be friends with you. So I did it, and it's like 25 minutes. It's an episode of a series called Sports Explains the World. And she gave me the script, and she's like, what do you want to change? So I I said, this is how we talk. These are the signals. I was there when they were filming, and I got to say, there was one scene where security comes to back my character off, and they run away. I was like, no, she has to take her chips when she runs away. Like, so, you know, you got to do it over. It's just the little things. Like, she has to grab, you know. So it's me talking and telling stories, and then a reenactments, but it's done like really well. And she never mentions that I'm a woman. Not one time. We never mention it. I'm just a professional, successful gambler, and it's never mentioned. But she did a great job. So got into Tribeca into the short competition for a short feature, short documentary. Yeah, it was really fun, and people liked it. And it's just about card counting mostly. And people, I was like, is this really that interesting? But yeah, she did a good job. It was her that got it in.
Is it going to be out there?
Yeah,
publicly?
There's a whole series, and it'll be on a streaming service, I thought, by the end of the year. I mean, I thought by now, but hopefully by the end of the year.
Did you have any fears or concerns about showing your face in the show?
No, I crossed that bridge a few years ago. I did a podcast for The Ringer, which was another thing I didn't want to do, and I've been trying to sell a book for years. So David Hill is the host of The Ringer, and he said, we'll make this like a book proposal. Like, I'll make this good. Please don't worry, I will edit this well. And I trusted him, and we're good friends now. And I said, okay, I trust you. And so he did. He made it like a book proposal, and then that happened, and then Queen's Gambit came out, and then I was able to option my story rights. And so I don't want to say a brand, but I needed to not be anonymous.
Yeah.
I needed to have a name and a face. And I was already writing a blog, and then I figured I'd put my face on it. So I lost some opportunities, but I think I gained more than I lost. Yeah.
Well, you're used to taking gambles. So.
Yeah, I took a gamble.
You played, but you also ran teams. What did you enjoy? Because, I mean, I loved playing.
Yeah.
And then I didn't. And then I loved running teams.
Did you?
Like, it felt empowering to train up and to help people have success with it.
Yeah.
It was stressful, especially when we're losing, and, you know, which probably was some of the stuff you were doing that weren't the swings that we had. But anyway.
What you're saying, though, we had a high win rate. So it's a lot more fun when everyone's winning. Like, we had a really high win rate for years and years. So that makes it a lot of fun. And I think your team was bigger. What was your max?
Maybe like all tested out at once, maybe 14.
Oh, okay. So our max was 12, but we'd only go on a trip with 4 to 6 people, 3 to 6, depending. I liked working with people. I like working with people. Even now, I have one partner that I still work with from 15 years ago. And whenever I think I have a spot, even if I don't need a partner, I'm like, hey, I have this thing, and this thing, and I want to do it, and I want to do it with someone, and so I want to do it with you. And usually he's like, no, that's not good. Like 9 out of 10 times he's like, no, that's not good enough. But that 1 out of 10 times that he's like, yeah, this is good, and then he does it with me, and we usually do really well. I just like working with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like the managerial side?
So it was a democracy, and there was like a numbers guy. Like, I didn't do that. And then we do the chop, and sometimes somebody else would be better at that. Or we'd go on trips, and it wasn't, we had a like circuit we'd do, and we kind of knew who was going on what. So we never had to decide like all the time. But I remember there was one time where we didn't have investors, but there were a couple of us who were bringing all the money on trips, and we were playing so big that it got to be a lot of money. If we had a losing trip, people owed a lot of money, and we'd always get it back. Like, we always got it back, but at some point we were the most skilled, and we were bankrolling the trip, or all the trips. And a couple people thought we should be making more because it was an even chop, always. And I remember we changed the chop, and people were very upset. And it felt really bad. And looking back, I shouldn't have changed the chop. I just shouldn't have done it. And if we didn't change it a lot, it was like, we're going to get this much more because we're bringing the money. I shouldn't have done that. I regret that. But that was the most uncomfortable. Yeah. In
an earlier team, it was 4 of us. There was all this talk about, well, not everybody's carrying the same weight, and so who gets what? And it was like, It just made it so much less fun.
Yeah, yes. It made it less fun, and people were what's it called? They were not respected. They were offended. They were offended that you would say, but then when you put it on paper, it's like, well, I'm doing all these jobs that make me want to sleep for a week, and I'm bringing the money, and we're making a ton of money. I remember there was this one guy who was like not very skilled at all, and he worked part-time, and he was like making $150 for like the last 2 years. He was so mad, and I thought, why are you mad? Like, I understand why someone else, whatever. I do regret it. That was the worst part of it, running a team. Yeah.
Yeah. Having it not work out with people that I want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Is brutal.
Yeah.
We had to let a couple people go that I still to this day, like, I like them, we're friends, but it was just brutal to say, hey, we can't.
We're a business.
It doesn't make sense business-wise. I'm sorry.
We had paid players who just got paid a flat fee, so that wasn't an issue. It's like, you're not skilled. You're doing these other jobs. Here's $1,500 for the weekend. Get room service, like whatever. But then we had, full-time members, and the skill levels were different. I shouldn't have done that. I regret that. But yeah, it was uncomfortable.
What are some key mistakes new hole carders make?
New hole carders. They're too low. They're too obvious.
Too low to the table.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to. You can sit like this and see a hole card. If you're on the ground.
Well, and what's, you're going to ruin it for yourself, but for everyone too, right?
Yeah.
If I just go and get really low and wear a hat.
I think people are less concerned about ruining it for other players because the environment is more competitive, and when you find a game, most of the time people think they want to kill it before someone else gets to it because someone else is going to kill it. But like jumping on a game, you think you're jumping on a game and you have as much right to it as the other person on there. Okay, fine, but you don't know if you're jumping into someone else's heat. Like, you're just like, money, hole card, I want the money, but you're not. They could have heat and they could be just playing through the heat, or you have no idea. And if you get caught with them, the other thing is, like, I've done this before. I've played a session and we have a table win. We know how much we could win before we get heat, so we win whatever it is. And then I've seen another hole carder try to get on the table, and I won't leave my seat where they can get the hole card because they're going to get a seat. They're going to come in and win as much, and they're going to play irresponsibly. So I'm just going to sit there for 6 hours and bet my $10, and you can't have my seat. And then the other thing I was talking about earlier is playing a hole card game and then going to check slots. Like, you need to choose. If you're playing hole cards there, you're not checking slots there. If you're checking slots there, come back another day to scout for hole cards. That's a big tell.
The level of effort you put into treating it professionally, like cleaning up a game.
Yeah.
Or just thinking through how to do this in a way that's smart for the long term and the short term, and to keep the casino off your case. That probably very difficult for a new person to
There's
think
so
that way.
much to know. There's so much to know. And like cleaning up a game, like I've seen games where there are multiple hole carders.
Can you explain what that means?
Oh yeah. So cleaning up, there are multiple hole carders. Dealer goes home. Everyone leaves the table. And so cleaning up a game is like, my BP just won whatever. I don't think we have heat. I stay behind for half an hour, and I continue to play. And I see if what they say about him. I see if heat comes down. I don't want to look like I'm with him. I might go to another table. Like, I'm cleaning up. I'm not just like, oh, we're done, I'm leaving. Like, it's really important to clean up the game.
So smart. It's just probably a lot of newer people don't think that
If
way.
somebody doesn't tell you that, and if they're not doing it as their job, they don't care as much if they get backed off, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
What would you say is roughly the hourly ratio scouting to playing?
Oh,
for hole carders?
It depends where you are. It depends if you're playing carnival games or just blackjack. It just depends. I can't even it's more hours scouting, obviously, by a lot, but I don't. Because then when you find a game, you can go play it for 8 hours. Let's say you play it 20 times and you didn't have to walk around. But let's say you had to walk around 50 hours to find it. So it's hard to give an answer to that.
So I know you've been involved in some high-profile court cases. Do you mind sharing that story of how it happened?
The Supreme Court one? Yeah. I'll give the short version.
And also, do
Yeah.
you wish you would have taken more legal action?
Yes. Oh, you mean in other areas or that one?
Yes, both.
I was detained somewhere for 4 hours, and the cops just taunted me for 4 hours. And so I sued a casino, and we settled. And we were new. We didn't have big bankrolls. And I wish we didn't settle. That's a regret, settling, because we had such a good case. So I regret that for sure. We could have... They had no argument. They had no leg to stand on. So we sued Metro, and we sued at the casino. So I wish I didn't settle. And then the Supreme Court thing, we were traveling from Las Vegas to Atlantic City to Puerto Rico, back to Las Vegas. And when we left Puerto Rico, we had $100,000 on us. And TSA saw it while we were leaving. And they said, you might get stopped when you get to your destination. So we actually got stopped on our layover in Atlanta, and by DEA agents, and they surrounded us, and they took every dollar we had because they said it was drug money, and it's a free roll for them. Wasn't drug money. And so that was the whole thing. And then I was very honest with them, and I was showing them trip logs, and I'm a professional gambler, and this is my name, and this is where I live, and da-da-da. And so he said, if you can prove this stuff when you get back, we'll give you your money back. So Bob Nersessian was the lawyer, and he sent our tax returns and professional gambler. I've been putting professional gambler for, how many decades now. And they wouldn't give the money back. And so it was 8 months of, if you take a lie detector test, we'll give you the money back. No. And we were fortunate that we were still working. The 100K wasn't our bankroll. We still could work. So we had that going for us. So then they said, if you sign something that you won't sue, we'll give you the money back. I was, nope, let's keep going. So they gave the money back, and then we immediately sued the DEA agent. He lied, saying that we weren't honest with who we were. Some better wording than that. So we sued in Nevada. Nevada courts kicked it out because it happened in Georgia. We appealed. It ended up, appeal. It ended up in the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit said, you can sue in Nevada. Great. The only way he can appeal is to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they don't hear they hear less than 1% of cases that they get a year. And so they took our case, and they heard it. And at this point, we're suing over jurisdiction, or we're at the Supreme Court over jurisdiction. Where can you sue? If the crime happens here, can you sue here? That was the question. And we lost. And I guess it was a big deal because companies wanted the ruling that they got. You have to sue. Like, if you're a company and you're based here and something happens here, well, where do you have to sue? It's harder for the company if you sue here, so you have to sue in their state. That I'm giving a very short explanation. So we lost the jurisdiction argument, and then I could have sued in Georgia, and I wanted to, but at that point, it was just to prove a point. It was always to prove a point, and there's no money in it, and I couldn't find a lawyer who was not passionate, but interested, who even cared. Like, you got your money back. This was so long ago. Why do you care? So I didn't sue in Georgia, but the jurisdiction, it was a big deal for jurisdiction. Now it's part of the syllabus in law school. Your first year or two, they teach Walden v. Fiore. That's the case. And I've had a lot of lawyers say, oh, I heard about your case. We had to study your case, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost.
So with the other one too, do you feel like you wish you would have not settled to prove a point? It was
to prove a point, but it was also I want to take more money from you where it hurts.
Yeah.
Because you locked us in a back room for 4 hours, and you scared us, and it was not nice. It was not nice what they did. So.
Well, I could see you're on Twitter, you're passionate about the civil forfeiture stuff that's happening all over.
They just take your money, and then it's a free roll. And we were lucky that we didn't need the 100K, and that we had the 10K to pay our lawyer to get it back. And then we had a lawyer that knew we were gamblers and was like, okay. And I was fortunate that I didn't have can you imagine me being 19 years old and I got caught with a joint or something stupid, and it's well, she has a history of drug this or that, anything, any little thing. So we were lucky, but it happens to people where that's all of their money. And people say, well, the only people who carry money are criminals. Okay, change the law. Then just change it, because right now the law is, you can carry any amount of money. makes me really mad. It's not okay. It's just not.
No, it's not.
And it would have been nice to win a case against the agent and have people be able to point to that case as precedent and say this is, the Fiore case, but that's not what happened.
So changing. No,
I get worked up. It's not okay.
I know. It's so frustrating. What is it about advantage play that resonates with you?
It's fun to figure things out. And I'm not in the casino as often as I used to be, but I still make my living full time from gambling. Like, that's how I make my living, because I figured out how to win betting sports. And it's fun. It is fun to figure that stuff out and to make money betting college basketball, where I never made money betting college basketball. Like, it's fun. It's a fun brain exercise. The move I was talking about that I figured out myself, I'm so proud of this, because usually you go off of a move that someone else figured out, or that's been around for like decades, 100 years, whatever it is. But there was one thing I figured out myself, and having to figure out how to get that down we lost money on the move, but it was so fun to like do this new thing that like we figured out. We made the strategy. It's fun.
I remember you wrote a blog post about the energy you put into your backstory.
Oh God, yeah.
Why do you say, oh God, yeah?
Because that's another brain exercise. I put way too much energy into where am I from? Why am I here? Well, what do you do? And also, I don't want to make anyone feel bad, and I don't want to make their job harder. And I don't lie in my real life, and now I'm lying, but I don't want to lie with malintent. So now I have to have a whole entire story where I'm in these parameters. And so I build this whole thing, like, why are you in this town? Why are you back? What's your name? What do you do for... I have the backstory, and I have a lot of details for that backstory.
And also that you could go there and scout it looking one way.
Yeah, I can go and look homeless and quiet and just slink around, and then go back and have a nice purse or something, and now I'm someone different.
And that's unique. And would you try to train those skills to your team?
You can't teach people that. You can't teach people. I work with one guy, and he's so street smart. He is so street smart. We are on the same, and in life, like, we don't have anything in common. You would never put us together as friends, really, if we were in the same place. But he's got such street sense. But if this guy talked to you in real life and told you he was a professional gambler, I've made millions, you're never going to believe him, ever. But if you talk to like a kitchen table mathematician and they figured out how to beat this game, and I make money this way, but they get in the casino and they don't know how to act, but you'll believe that guy because he's so like smart on paper. There was a guy that tried to BP for us, and he worked at NASA, and he was an astrophysicist, and he was retired. And we brought him to the casino, and he just couldn't follow signals, and he didn't get, and we were in a casino once, and he had $10K falling out of his pocket, and we're watching it from across the room. And it was just like, he just couldn't. It's just a certain type. But yeah, you can't teach these things. You can't teach how to turn the dealer, say this thing at this moment. Yeah, it's just a personality.
So you have a son.
Yeah.
How do you now balance advantage play or sports betting, or how have you, since, being a mom with being a mom? Yeah, with,
yeah,
personal life, all that.
Well, I bet sports more, and I'm at home doing it.
Yeah.
And I want to say I get to make my own schedule, but I really don't, because if it's Saturday, I need to be on the computer, like right now for college football. But I get a lot of free time, and I do get to make my own schedule, because if we have to do the numbers at the end of the day, I can do it when he's sleeping. If we have to look back at line history or whatever, I can do that whenever. So I get to make my own schedule, which is nice. And if I have to go out of town, I schedule it when he's not with me, or I have a lot of help childcare wise. I make it work. It works fine. And I never miss a game. I never miss like an honor roll assembly. Like, I don't miss anything. And I volunteer at the school. So it's nice. It's mostly sports betting though. That's why. Do
the other parents ask what you do?
No. Like, they'll ask me if it comes up. I try not to get in that conversation, but if it comes up, I say that I gamble, And they don't ask because they don't understand. And I have my best family friends. My son's best friend and his parents. We vacation together. We hang out every weekend. And one time they said, well, we don't ask because it seems like you don't want to talk about it. And I said, I'll tell you whatever you want to know, but I don't think that you want to know. And so we had this big conversation about it. But most people don't know what to ask. So I just don't offer, I guess.
You just say, I gamble.
Well, my line is, I used to play a lot of blackjack, but now I bet sports, which is true. Mm-hmm. But that's my line. And then they think, oh, bet sports. Okay, no one's going to ask me what I bet and how do you, are you originating? Like, no one knows what any of that means. Yeah.
Before you were doing more of the sports betting stuff, did you get, or even before you had a child, did the travel wear on you?
The travel, I love traveling, but it hurt my social life. Like all my life is just AP, advantage play, gambling, travel, get on a plane, go at any moment. And so it messed with my real life schedule. Yeah, it messed with having a normal life for sure. But I miss traveling. I miss being on the road as much as I was.
Yeah.
I like traveling.
What's the most extreme measure you've gone to accomplish or pull off a play?
I think in general, something that was standard is like you have a whole card game and your dealer starts at 8:00 on Friday in Atlantic City. And so you plan your life so you're free and you get on a plane, West Coast time in Vegas or LA or wherever I was. And I fly to Philly and I rent a car and I drive to AC and I'm there half an hour before he starts work. And then I sit on his table. Oh, I've been here all week. And I just put this whole day of travel in to sit at this guy's table and he asks where are you from? Or something. And he doesn't know. And if he knew that my whole life was revolved around his schedule, what would you think? That's insane, right? You would be scared. You'd be scared of this girl that did that. I used to think about that a lot because we do it often. Or even out of the country. Like I'd fly out of the country to play a game. I'm not on vacation. It's like you have no idea you just don't know. And I think that's really crazy. But we used to I remember we had a dealer schedule. I paid someone to get a dealer schedule in the break room at this casino. And so we had her schedule and we knew where she'd be on swing shift. It was swing shift. So day shift, because we wanted to make sure that we had that table before she got there, I would sit or someone else would sit. We'd get there at 1:00 and we just play all day on the square. And it's so boring to know things and have to sit and play $5, $10, whatever it is. That doesn't sound extreme, but it is, to just sit there because you're setting up this play 8 hours later. I think the flying around the world to play with a certain and them having no idea.
Yeah, I really haven't thought a whole lot about it. I've driven many hours to get to a place, or we show up and the game's not there anymore. And we got turned around, they have no idea
what you went through.
Yeah.
And if they knew.
All sorts of weird things that so much conversation and number crunching and discussion, and they have no idea.
There will be times that you go to a city to play a game and it has to be the exact right conditions, and you're not leaving until, you're not a mom. You have no life except for advantage play. And you go there and you're there for 6 days and you just go in every shift, let's say it's day shift, you go in every day shift, check the conditions, no good. Whether it's a dealer or a certain game is open or whatever, and then you go back to your hotel and you do it again, and you're there every single day, and then you finally get the game on, and then you lose or something. You're like,
what about the game is open, but what you have to
get a seat
to get the conditions right?
I mean, just getting a seat can be like a big hassle, and it's always you're waiting for a seat and they're playing with red chips and they're down to their last. You already know where I'm going, and then they build up their stack till you know exactly where I'm going. There was one time I was waiting in Reno at El Dorado, right? It was in Reno, and my BP got a seat. It was like a Saturday night. He got a seat, so he's just he has a seat. It's not the one I need. And he's just betting like table minimum and blah, blah, blah. And you can't play slow because you need to bust the people out. So you have to play fast. So he's like in and out taking breaks. And there was a guy in my seat and he was like 120 years old and he's got the red chips and he's playing and I'm just waiting. I waited like 4 hours. So he finally gets up and I run and I get the seat and I sit down and he peed all over the seat. And it was so disgusting. And I just sat and pee and it's Saturday night and there's no chair next to me to like switch. And I've got to play, and now I have to like turn it on and like start thinking and playing. And then we had another partner there, and I texted him, and he got me a new chair on the break. It was so gross, and I had to sit in like these pans for the next 4 hours. It was so gross. But yeah, that's a memory.
What about times when you have to get someone off? Is there any tactics you use to try to like get someone to go away? Or
I've tried you play poorly, which you think would work because they get angry when they lose, but they win just as often. So it's not like you can force them to lose. And then there's being rude to them, which I honestly don't like doing. I'm a fan of just paying them. I'm a fan of having a teammate just come and pay them because it's weirder when I pay them, but someone comes up and they're like, I played her last night. I did so well. Like, can I play here? Here's whatever. And it's funny when someone buys the seat and they leave and then I just take it and the guy who bought it just like leaves. But we try to do it when the floorman isn't looking or the dealer, whatever. But I'd rather buy a seat than try smoking them out or like elbowing and being mean. I'd just rather, here's some money, give us a seat.
Was the transition from beating casino games to learning sports betting, was it natural? Or I know that you wrote something recently for Unabated where you said like, oh yeah, sports betting is a lot harder, but you're having success with it.
I think sports betting is a harder skill to learn than poker.
Because of less access to information?
Yeah, I would say that. And poker's solved at this point, and there's more information online for poker. I just think it's a harder skill to learn, but I think card counting is way easier than either of those. But then if you're doing more advanced, if you're sequencing aces, that's really hard. That's harder than both poker and in sports betting. It depends what you do. And I write things that say I'm a new sports bettor, which I'm new at diving deeper into sports betting, I'm self-deprecating and I act like I'm defensive right now, but I said it before, I've made like a healthy 6 figures betting sports starting in 2015, and people don't realize that because I'm like, oh, I'm new and I'm learning unabated tools. No, you
haven't won 10 million yet.
I haven't won 10 million yet, but I've won I've definitely more than most people who are trying to do it as a skill game. And the thing is, I picked the low-hanging fruit, and I'm not talking about bonuses. I'm just talking about Unabated has tools where I don't need to know how the tool works on the back end. I don't need to know. I just need to know this is the price I need, and I need lines that are about this. I need to not, tease this direction if I'm betting a teaser, and then I need to just put in what I think will have an edge, and then it'll tell me if I have an edge, and then I have to go bet that.
So what has made sports betting feel harder to get into?
It's the numbers. That's what it is. Like, I could not originate. I would never, if you locked me in a room and I can't leave till I can successfully beat baseball or, with my own numbers, I'm never leaving. I will die in that room. Like, it will never happen. So if you want to be that guy, it's really, really hard.
That makes sense because card counting, it was solved.
It's solved. And
poker's somewhat solved.
Yeah. In sports betting, there's a lot of gray area. And when you're counting cards, you can calculate your edge with every effective removal. 2's out, I know my edge. 10's out, I know my edge. Sports betting isn't like that. So I guess that's hard. That's what's hard for me.
Is it a little bit more of, you have an edge in hindsight? No, because you got tools.
I have the tools. Now. Well, the thing is, when I first beat sports betting, I was just betting weak lines versus Pinnacle. And I couldn't intelligently say, well, Pinnacle is my source of truth. And this is the edge I have because this line is, plus 110 and this is minus, 130. I couldn't tell you my edge, but I could tell you, wow, there's a big difference. I'm going to choose this much and I'm going to bet. And I made a lot of money doing that. But now because I've learned more, I can tell you how I was doing it. But I don't think people realize that, no, I've made money. I just don't speak well about it, I guess.
Well, you're one of the most respected hole carders that I know of.
I'll take that.
Relatively speaking,
Yeah.
newer with sports betting, but that doesn't mean you're not successful.
I can talk about advantage play where it's like, obviously she knows a lot about it. But when I talk about sports betting, I just don't get my thoughts out well. But I've made a lot of money, and I don't want people to think that I just am there for the fun of it, I guess.
You already took the plunge. You put yourself out there, your real name, your face. Why do it? What was worth it?
I want to move on from gambling full time. I'll always gamble with an edge, probably sports betting, but I want to move on from that and do creative things. And so I want to write a book. I've written a book basically, and I want to do TV. I want to be a consultant for gambling shows, like scripted shows where they have gambling scenes and they get it wrong.
Like the movie The Card Counter, where it's a 6 to 5 table?
Yes. And he doubles a 9 versus the 10 up, right?
Yes. How did that happen?
Yeah, I want to be on set for 10 minutes to say this, this, and this. I want to be the go-to. And one of my friends is the go-to magic consultant. Like you're doing a magic scene, he's the guy. I want to be the girl that does that. So that's one thing, but I optioned my story rights about being a professional gambler and growing up and stuff like that. And so we're finally developing a scripted show, like a series. And so that's finally happening. And that would not have happened if I didn't put my face out there and my name and do the Ringer Gamblers podcast. So I knew I'd lose opportunities, but I knew that I could make money betting sports and still do some casino stuff. And I can write a book and I can make a scripted show and hopefully become the consultant go-to. So that's my hope.
And you've won hundreds of thousands sports betting, so you don't need the other stuff is for the creative. Is that right?
I've won since 2016. I remember my son was a baby and he was in my lap. So from 2016, then there was a break in there until now where I'm betting more because I use the tools on Unabated. Honestly, I'm up mid 6 figures, like for sure, and not with bonuses, with actual sports betting. The bonuses are great too. Like if you want to do that because there's money. But just sports betting, I'm up mid 6 figures, and I don't expect that to change soon if I continue to learn. You have to keep learning. And
do you find like that's the good, healthy balance for you where you're at in life now? You got creative outlet.
Sometimes I put the creative stuff to the side, and I have like a tug of war with myself. Like, you want to do these things, so stop doing these things. And it's a war. I have this, I think about this every day. I have anxiety about this. But yeah.
And for people that want to read some of your you've been blogging for a number of years.
Yeah.
A number of years now. rxgamble.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like some of them are like really moving. Some of them are just like quirky or entertaining AP stories. So I guess people could check that out. Do you want people to check that out?
Yeah, no, it's rxgamble.com and it's my blog. And yeah, that's another thing. I don't post as often as I would like to because I'm doing sports betting. I also have like life stuff that takes me away, which is really frustrating, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, I would like to bet and hang out with my kid and finish my creative stuff, but something's always pulling me.
But it does seem like the creative stuff is
it's happening. It's happening. And so hopefully, and it's all gambling adjacent because that's all I know, right?
Yeah.
So it's all gambling adjacent, but it's creative, which is what I want to do.
So hopefully before long, people can see the short film.
Hopefully by the end of this year.
And before too long, the show.
Hopefully next year there's a scripted series. Hopefully it's done, and then a book.
You'll let us know.
Yeah, I'll be back. Yeah.
when the book's ready.
Yeah.
And for people that want to use the same tools you've used to make multiple
Unabated,
6 figures at sportsbettingunabated.com.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story with us.
Colin.
It's actually really fun to interview you because I've known about the teams that you're a part of and the things. And for me, it's like I didn't get into that stuff. So I get to hear about it and kind of like live vicariously through hearing other people's stories. So thank you.
All right. Thanks.
If you want to learn more about how to beat sports books, check out this video right here from Unabated.